most convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I'll tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. An obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
All right, it is Friday, January 31st, 2025, the 12th day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Welcome, everybody. It is Friday. I see a lot of people being very active in the chat, so hello to you all. As I was getting ready to do this in the last half hour and trying to eat some lunch before we started, a friend of mine who lives close showed up with two random dogs who'd been lost in our area and asking if he could put them at my place until people showed up for them. And so I was dealing with that, and I'm a little scattered. Hopefully it doesn't translate into the show. It's all good now. It's all good now. But things were a little touch and go there for a minute. I think we're okay now. I think we're okay. Everybody's going to be okay. All right, so let's start out with some funny stuff, and then let's get into some not as funny stuff, and then we're going to catch up on some news from a little earlier in the week and update on some of the stuff that we've been talking about. I don't think I'm going to spend the whole day on the Sky event, the plane crashing into the helicopter. We have seen video of a plane and a helicopter crashing. It's really just grainy video of one light approaching another light in the sky, and then an explosion, and then one of the lights goes in the river. That's what we've seen. We've been told a story about a helicopter and a plane crashing, and Donald Trump and others have participated in that story, and we'll see where it goes. For now, the pilot of the helicopter is trans, but no, wait. The pilot of the helicopter is not trans. Turns out it was the wrong helicopter pilot. Whoops. So we've already gotten a bunch of bullshit. Oh, by the way, Russian figure skaters among the dead in this disaster, coincidentally, totally coincidentally, Tanya Harding joined Twitter just that morning, like 12 hours before this major story in the figure skating world. And then Nancy Kerrigan got on television that night or maybe it was yesterday in the morning, but I think it was the same night. And just openly cried. It was like it was, I don't know, what was that, 1994, 1992, something like that, all over again. Tanya Harding out there just being a lovable Tanya Harding, which she is, falsely accused, I believe. And Nancy Kerrigan crying. It's what we know them both to do, both to be. I'm sorry about Nancy's knee. Not pro pipe beating or whatever it was, but just a strange confluence of events. That's all I'm saying. So Trump said we had a DEI pilot incident or DEI air traffic control incident. Pete Hegseth said it was a training exercise, a continuity of government training exercise. And that's funny because Burning Bright and I did Iron Man, the original Iron Man from 2008 or 2009 on Badlands Story Hour on Tuesday night. And it had this scene in it just one day, 24 hours before the Sky event.
You crazy son of a bitch. You owe me a plane, you know that, right?
Yeah, well, technically he hit me, so now you're gonna come by and see what I'm working on?
No. The less I know, the better. Now, what am I supposed to tell the press?
Training exercise. Isn't that the usual BS?
It's not that simple. An unfortunate training exercise involving an F-22 Raptor occurred yesterday. I am pleased to report that the pilot was not injured.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying. In Iron Man, they disseminated broadly to to basically all of America. I mean, this is a superhero action movie. Everybody goes and sees those. And now, unfortunately, I've seen that movie twice because Burning Bright made me see it the second time. The first time I watched it to be like, are these as bad as I think they are? And I watched it and I was like, damn, that is definitely as bad as I think these movies are. And then I did the same thing with Avengers. And at that point, I learned my lesson. Christopher Nolan Batman's cool. Every other superhero movie that I have ever seen, I think, aside from Watchmen, if that counts, but every other one absolutely sucks. And I guess people don't like it when I say that, which is fine. So they announced to everybody, all of America, when something happens and we don't want to tell the public the truth, what we tell them is that it was a training exercise. And of course, we've been told about Wednesday's Sky event that it was a training exercise. Pete Hegseth said it was a continuity of government training exercise. And Donald Trump, actually, you know what? While we're on the subject, I didn't expect to tackle this right off the bat, but I figure maybe we'll just get it out of the way. And then we don't have to maybe ever talk about this ever again. Trump press conference. Yeah, there we are. Plane crash. And I say that and people are like, that's insensitive. And I know. Except here's the thing. We're going to analyze these things as stories because all of them are info ops. At the very bottom, even if there was a real crash and real people died, and I'm not convinced that happened, but even if that did happen, we're being communicated to in certain ways about this event, and none of those ways should be presumed true, no matter who's saying them. And so we move to different stages. We withdraw ourselves totally emotionally. What would be the point of involving our emotions in what we've been shown on television when we're trying to figure out how to guide our lives against the greatest evil that has ever existed in the world? Why would we be, I'm going to give you my emotions about what it means when the television shows us mass trauma events? When they try to intentionally inflict trauma on all of us, the best thing to do is believe every damn thing they say. I mean, that's really where we're at with all of this. But let's go ahead and see if I can just pull up there we are. Well, that's Pete Hegseth's. Okay, here is the question asked of Donald Trump in the press conference yesterday. And worth noting, we'll be talking about some of this later. It is worth noting that Donald Trump scheduled a plane crash press conference right as Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel were in their Senate hearings, giving their testimony to take their positions in the Trump administration. And I'm not saying that you should think something bad about Tulsi or Cash because of that, but a lot of people were like, oh, this plane crash thing, it's an info op. It's real, of course, but it's an info op to distract from Cash's hearing. Well, if that's the case, then Trump was in on it, because Trump scheduled a press conference for himself in the middle of their hearings to take eyes off their hearings and redirect them toward Donald Trump and what he had to say about this event. You can take that however you want to take it, but underlying however it is you might take it, and we might disagree about how to take that, but underlying that is the fact that Donald Trump himself intentionally pulled eyes away from those hearings. So what should we make of that? Is it possible that the event happened and Trump drafted off that event and is now capitalizing on it and taking the narrative of that event in a direction other than it was supposed to go? That's usually what happens in these things. And Tulsi and Cash can be 100% awesome. And Trump could still decide, well, these hearings are a little boring. It's pointless political theater that actually doesn't matter at all. And I'm going to address this issue that people are extremely interested in. I'm going to make sure that the correct story is out here, or out there, I should say, about the Sky event. Could just be that innocent and that simple. But here's what he said.
They feel hesitant to fly. And if you could clarify perhaps something that the defense secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission.
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were, and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to. But it was basically practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly. Okay.
It's called a little practicing. It's called practicing. So they had practice. It worked out very badly. Is Donald Trump being insensitive when he says those things? I don't think so. He mourned the lives lost, and now he's talking about the event. Pete Hegseth said quite clearly that it's continuity of government, and I suppose I might as well put that on the record. It shouldn't be hard to find, and then whoever hasn't heard it is privy to it. And that's easy enough, is it not? We can get that on the record. Pete Hegseth. Gosh, man, this should be easier to find. Why am I so bad at information today? Some days you just can't move it as fast as other days, and that's what she said, I guess. Okay, here we are. Here we are. Sorry. Hold for processing. We are almost there.
Young captain, staff sergeant, and CW2 chief warrant officer on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission.
Continuity of government mission. I don't know what that is. Trump didn't tell us. Trump said the continuity he was seeking was having competent people in these positions. Did Pete Hegseth go above and beyond what he was supposed to say, and Donald Trump just wanted to redirect his comments? It seems like that's what's happening there. I cannot imagine that Donald Trump is unaware of continuity of government missions because he signed executive orders about continuity of government. Maybe this was whatever Joe Biden was setting up when he edited the continuity of government executive order in his last hours as fake president. So we have all of that. We have ice skaters, and I guess we're going to have to see what happens. The media kept asking Trump about whether it was safe to fly. Should people feel like it's not safe to fly? Maybe, right? Are helicopters just going crazy? The Lockheed Martin automatically piloted helicopters that were being shown off before, AI potentially piloting, flying commercial jets, from my understanding, and I know a few pilots and whatnot. I mean, they have a role certainly, but a lot of that is done in very like standard confined fashions. Like, this is how you get out. This is how you get in. Maybe there's more human activity and choice involved, but seems pretty run of the mill. So how does something like this happen? The blame is being directed toward air traffic controller standards being lowered so that people with various mental disabilities or gender confusion or whatever it might be are getting important jobs over equity concerns. And so removing DEI programs from the FAA, as Trump began doing last week, and setting certain standards for aviation, that's going to be the solution to make sure that something like this never happens again, apparently. Let me see. It's hard to know. So this is potentially related or potentially not related. And people are going to, again, dig further on this and make their own judgments about it. This is from Euronews, reprinted by Yahoo News yesterday. Belgian airspace reopens after closure forced Prime Minister Fico's flight to return to Slovakia. So Fico is the Slovakian prime minister who the regime attempted, at least this is how the story goes, to assassinate, I don't know, 6-7 months ago. Was his flight supposed to be hit? Was there going to be some collision on his flight? And they took that story, false started it over here, made it a national news issue. Hard to say. I mean, that is definitely a conspiracy theory. I'm speculating here. But what are we supposed to do? Should we just accept the central narrative, the official story within the central narrative? I believe that there is a pattern in the world that is observable, that I've been observing for years and been talking about on this show. We are in a battle of narratives, partly, mostly, maybe completely. Okay? People don't like that. They want it to be a battle of real events, and then we're hearing stories about real events. It's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that there is a battle of stories over the collective consciousness. And sometimes there are real events tied to those stories, but no real event is required in many cases. People are saying, are you saying it's all staged? I don't know. I'm just saying that if you know we are in a battle of narratives, if you know there is a fog of war, if you know that the only information we get is unreliable, and if you know that our discernment is never going to be perfect, immediately giving the default benefit of the doubt to what the television tells you being true makes you an insane person. That's simple. Okay? And are you saying that this was all filmed? They have multiple video angles. Yeah, totally. They could have never gotten multiple video angles otherwise. The grainiest, worst, least detailed video of all time could have been filmed at any point within the last 30 years in reality or in a film studio in Hollywood. The video you saw of that crash, you don't think you've ever seen that in a Hollywood film or a television show? If you don't think that you've seen something that looks like that in a movie or a TV show, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you don't watch movies or TV shows. Anyone who's spent a considerable amount of their American life watching television or movies will tell you that they've seen video that looks exactly like that. I certainly have. I have no doubt in my mind that video like that could have easily been produced in a film studio at any point within the last 30 or 40 years. So The video's nothing. The story's real. The dissemination of the story is very real. That's Burning Bright and I talk about this, and I'm not sure who else does. I think it's just us. But engaging these things as story only, you are engaging with the only real, knowably real part of this. And that's it, unfortunately. And people would suggest there are other knowably real parts. You're going to say that this guy's lying and this guy's lying. I don't know who's lying. I don't know who's making up what. I don't know who is using made up stories meant to benefit the other side for our side's good, which I think Donald Trump is doing a lot of the time. I don't know, which is why I revert to not depending on any of those things. And then seeing what we have to go on from a story only approach. And right here, we have Belgian skies being closed yesterday on the same day, the response day to that event, due to a technical problem with the air traffic controller. Air traffic in Belgium was temporarily suspended this afternoon after 12 p.m. and is now slowly being resumed. So the impact for us was that some flights were delayed from 20 minutes to an hour, and 2 flights were diverted to another airport. Okay, so no crisis over there, but it just also happens that the other part of the story is about the Slovakian prime minister, who was the target of an assassination attempt last year, who's considered a Putin ally, a sovereign alliance ally. So are those events related? Am I suggesting a conspiracy? Is my pattern recognition tuned just a little bit too high right now? Totally possible. Decide for yourself. Is the official story true? No. The official story is not true. So what do you have to work with from there? Well, Trump's definitely drawing attention to the main story. What was the figure skating stuff? I would suggest to you that the figure skating stuff is an op indicator. Now, I know that a lot of people watching today probably weren't in the subscriber stream on Wednesday because, of course, when there are public streams, there are more people watching. But Tuesday was the anniversary of the Challenger disaster. Within the days leading up to Tuesday, space people realized that what they thought was an asteroid was actually just Elon Musk's car in orbit, his Tesla Roadster that he shot up there 7 years ago, and said, you know, it's real because it looks so fake. And then that evening, Donald Trump suggested that he's going to send Elon Musk in a rocket to the International Space Station, which probably isn't real or definitely isn't real, to quote unquote, go get the 2 astronauts that are stuck up there who have been quote unquote virtually abandoned up there. And so I would suggest to you that the ridiculous asteroid Tesla Roadster story was one of those indicators that something really retarded is coming down the pike. And so on the day of the anniversary of when we were told astronauts were being sent up to that space station so they could film a reality show in the sky, and the rocket that they weren't on happened to blow up on that same day, Donald Trump tells Elon Musk to go save those astronauts off the International Space Station. So that's what I would refer to as an op indicator. Is Tanya Harding joining Twitter the morning before we have the Sky event with Russian figure skaters? Is that an op indicator in that scenario? Rather than Robert Fico on the plane that is crashing, we have Russian figure skaters. And would we have heard that the air traffic controllers, something was wrong with the air traffic controllers in Belgium? Maybe. Who knows how these things work? Let's move on. I don't know the right answers to these questions, just to be very, very clear about it, okay? But if we are at this point and not asking questions about this stuff for reasons of sensitivity to whom, okay? And people would say, well, the figure skaters and the family of those people that were on the crash. Well, yes, you'd be right if there was a crash. But then we're already giving the benefit of the doubt to the media. And you know what? I bet that at least half of the people in the families of those who would have been on that plane would probably know that the media is untrustworthy. And I would suggest that it actually is probably more like 80 or 90% of those people. And so it's entirely possible that the media is trustworthy sometimes and correctly reporting this on their behalf, but there's no reason to assume that. And I don't know how else we're supposed to go through this world. The TV tells us something that we have to feel sensitive about, and therefore we just say, all right, well, go ahead. Take the head start. Go as far as you want. Get everybody back on the same page if you want. We can't ask questions about that. And, you know, you can recall the social environment, the social climate after 9/11. Horrible tragedy, as I've said many times before. I knew people who died in the towers. I know that something happened. Something really, really awful happened. And a great many people died, and our society was turned upside down. Okay, I understand all that. At the same time, got to be able to question the official story. We can certainly do it now. Everybody pretty much agrees now, 23 plus years on down the line, that it's acceptable to question the official story about 9/11. You just couldn't do it in October or November or December or January or February or March. You know, you couldn't do it for years and years after the event, or else you were a conspiracy theorist and you would be marginalized, pushed to the fringes of society. Every organ of our culture was aligned to support the official story within the central narrative about 9/11. And I would suggest to you that that's a dangerous place to be when it comes to the most important events in the world. And if it's a dangerous place to be when it comes to the most important events, it's a dangerous place to be when it comes to small events too, because those small events are actually forming ideas in people's minds, and those ideas will lead to certain behaviors. And through those behaviors, people will help the regime create the layer of the false reality around us. I wish it could be another way. I wish, first of all, they didn't even actually release the identities of any of these people. As far as I know, that was the case yesterday when Trump did the press conference. I haven't looked into that aspect. Let's see. Maybe the machine will tell me quickly. Might as well remark on it if they have the names of the machine says some names: plane crew, Army helicopter crew, and a handful of passengers their names have been released. So I guess we'll see. We'll get to that next step, maybe, or maybe not. I understand that people don't like the notion that stuff like that could be faked. It absolutely can be. And then to say, well, they wouldn't do it. Let's not be naive. They would do it. And it's an unfortunate state about society, or an unfortunate statement about society, perhaps. But is it wrong? That's the question. Let's move on. Hakeem Jefferies had this to say today. This is just a quick one.
Fight it. Legislatively, we're going to fight it in the courts, and we're going to fight it in the streets.
Oh, baby, we're going to fight it in the streets. Well, okay, good luck. We were told they were going to fight it in the streets after the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade. We were told that there was going to be a summer of action. We're going to have another summer of love like 2020. He is inciting insurrection. Obviously, it's quite obvious that he's inciting insurrection because they have actually organized that insurrection in the past. And we have watched as that organized insurrection has wreaked havoc in major cities around our country. We saw that with our own eyes in 2020. Was it all an op? It was an op on some level. The White House responded, apparently. Rapid response. This is the Twitter official account. Rapid response for 47. That's the Trump 47 White House So take it for what it's worth. Will House Minority Leader Jefferies apologize to the American people? At a press conference this morning in Brooklyn, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jefferies made a sick call for violence and incited his followers to fight President Trump's agenda, quote unquote, in the streets. Will Minority Leader Jefferies apologize for this disgusting threat, or will he double down on the same calls for violence that have plagued the country for years? And I would suggest that he would double down. That is clearly his role, and it is 100% aligned with the political movement he seems to represent. There is no reason why we should ever expect anything other than that. B. Worsley 30 just became a monthly supporter. Thank you very much. Taking a little look at the chat. Okay, we shall continue. Let's go to ABC News. Here we are. There we are. Okay. I had two ABC News articles pulled up. Scared the daylights out of myself. ABC News today, federal employees told to remove pronouns from email signatures by end of day. So what that means is now we are going to have to figure out who has the wee-wees, who has the hoo-has, and who has mental illness in the old-fashioned way. And no, I don't mean the way that they do it in Crocodile Dundee, which is just grabbing people by the crotch. I do not encourage that at all, although it was totally acceptable in the 1980s. Or it could have been the 1990s, but I think it was the 80s. Maybe Crocodile Dundee too was in the 90s. It was totally acceptable back then. It was also acceptable to make fun of tyrannies back then, but you're not allowed to do it now. Not allowed to do it now. You are allowed to talk about them all the time, as they do on the Daily Weimar. You just kind of get in trouble for it sometimes. There is a federal employee in my Telegram chat who attended one of our Great American Restoration Tour events, and we met, and she is very open and honest about federal employment. She said today, after I posted this story, that she has never, in her experience as a federal employee, seen pronouns connected to a government email at any point over these last however many years. That's one person's experience. It's anecdotal. I asked her whether she thought that that was related to industry or sector. You know, is it different in the Department of Education, perhaps, than it is in the Department of Energy? You could assume that it might be for kind of cultural reasons and what those organizations kind of have their hands in. But as far as she knows, in her personal experience, she has never seen pronouns attached to a government email. And so I said, is it industry or sector, or is it possible that we are seeing action to solve a narrative problem where no actual problem existed? And I would suggest that is possible. And she said that it was, that she suspects it was more likely that than a difference between sectors or agencies. I said industries, I meant agencies. So is it different in the Department of Education than it is in the Department of Defense? Is it different in sub-agencies? Is it different in the DOJ's Civil Rights Division than it is at the DOD? Okay. She thought it was more likely that this is a narrative-only problem, and it's entirely possible that that problem has been blown out of proportion completely. That's not to deny the problem. I understand the problem is real. I know people in Hollywood who were in the midst of transing their kids. Okay. Not denying any of that whatsoever. Not in the slightest. Nor am I denying how cruel that is. Okay. Donald Trump signed an executive order the other day about getting rid of any involvement in child genital mutilation or convincing children that they are another gender. I think all of that is an atrocity and a crime against humanity. Okay. I think it's also a crime against rationality to make people accept as true that which is the opposite of the truth. Okay. The defining characteristic between men and women is the parts. Okay. The chromosomes. You can't then suggest that it is everything but that. Okay. That is a total inversion within the false reality. So I'm 100% on board all of that. I think all of it should be done away with completely. That said, talking about it for 24 hours a day, as they do on the Daily Weimar, suggests that what they are is actually controlled opposition. And the reason is because that's the sort of thing that we could have all just known 10 years ago if the response had been, there's absolutely no way that this could ever be true. And you just plowed forward in that truth and started talking about the more advanced problems rather than making 24/7 trans content for 10 years. And there are always going to be pushbacks against the global regime's social agenda. They've been running the same social agenda for decades, for at least a century, but really for thousands of years. And again, I always recommend Prussiagate Urania on this stuff. You know, you have the Weimar Republic and then the controlled opposition Nazis. So we have the same exact playbook running right now, and you've got the controlled opposition that identifies itself as on our side based on their attention to these issues, but then they never actually move to the much bigger issues. They never actually move to the most important things that would delegitimize the real enemy. They make sure that everybody knows that the enemy is totally legitimate. There is an underlying reality in what we are having these debates over, and we're just basically expressing different opinions about this underlying reality. Us all from the conservative side, them all from that liberal side. Okay, but your conservatism is neoconservatism, which is ideologically downstream from Trotsky. You are a collectivist, you are a globalist, and you are militant about it. Okay, so I don't care that our ideas about gender align, though we have different approaches to that. Yours is clearly the controlled opposition approach that does not actually get outside the central narrative bubble that they are happy to create because the culture perpetuates itself. And that's the point of the controlled opposition, to make it seem like there is actual pushback if you support this particular set of people. But that particular set of people is what allows them to get away with perpetually stolen elections, for instance, which is why they don't talk about stolen elections. Okay. Why don't they talk about our currency? Why don't they talk about geopolitics in any particularly mature way, aside from saying, that guy's a leftist down there in Venezuela? What do you like, leftists? These people are retarded and they're not on our side. Okay. It's important to recognize that controlled opposition all the time. And people are like, well, why aren't you supporting our side? What is our side? I try to be on the side of the truth as I see it in the best possible analysis I can give it. And I try to apply a consistent, rationally supportable epistemology when I am analyzing these events. And I try to show my work to everybody who engages with my content so that they know exactly where I'm coming from. And then I stand there and address criticisms all the time. I don't ignore the people in my comments. I don't spend my days groveling in hopes that Elon Musk will repost me. I'm not even on that app because I want to refuse those social incentives completely. Okay. So I'm supposed to just support these people because some believe they're on my team. No, I'll pass on that. I'll pass on that. Thank you very much. Okay. And so I want to talk a bit about the hearings that we've seen over the last couple of days and some of the ways that these are being perceived. And I want to be clear from the beginning. First of all, I really like Cash and think that Cash has a very important role to play. So that's just there. I cite information that Cash has given us many times, often, I would say. He's been on my show twice. I have nothing bad to say about Cash Patel. Not a single bad thing to say about Cash Patel. Okay. Let's get that out there right off the bat. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I may be the first person in the kind of quote unquote public conversation to have suggested just flat out there, RFK Jr. could and maybe should be chosen as Donald Trump's vice president because, first of all, political parties shouldn't exist. Second of all, it was a fake campaign leading up to a fake election. And none of this is how the president and vice president were decided at the nation's founding. All right. That's a pretty, I think I can put that down in a solid foundation that reflects not only my personal principles, but MAGA principles and what I see as the reality as it exists now, and a hope that we can move the country forward on the basis of some amount of truth. Okay. I have never been anti-RFK Jr. Tulsi, I have nothing good to say about, but nothing bad to say about either. She's a TV character to me and nothing more. And maybe she is something more. And if that turns out to be the truth, then cheers to her. And I'll be more than happy to admit that I'm wrong. Okay. Not here to cast aspersions on her. I don't care. I don't care at all. I don't care whether these people are confirmed or not confirmed. Donald Trump is the plenary authority of the executive branch. The Senate is totally illegitimate. Okay. I'm going to post this later. I wrote it down because I was in the middle of a run. But what we're essentially saying, and what many of my friends in the truth community are saying, is this public service nominee wants my representatives, right? The senators and the congressmen, senators in this case, but these are our representatives that supposedly we elected. We want our representatives to give this public service nominee their approval to serve, right? On my behalf. And the public service nominee is lying to my representatives, because if they don't lie to my representatives, then my representatives won't vote to confirm that public service nominee that the president, who we all support, selected. Okay. So the nominee has to lie to our representatives so that our representatives will vote for that nominee. And we're supposed to be like, yeah, it's a good thing the public service nominee is lying in front of the nation. Yeah, they got to lie about this thing, because if they don't lie about this thing, well, then the public service nominees are not going to vote for that. My representatives are not going to vote for that public service nominee. You want the public service nominee to lie to the nation so that an illegitimate representative of you will give that person their vote so that that person can actually take the position in the executive branch that the plenary authority in the executive branch is saying, that's the guy I want. There are so many problems with that framework. Honestly, it is just irrational nonsense that we've all been spewing for 5 years to justify the fact that the television characters are lying to us en masse all the time. Okay. And I'm not, again, addressing specifically any one of those three right now, because it's happening in all of these hearings all the time. Just aberrant nonsense being agreed to, the truth of the underlying reality being agreed to by the Democrats in the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, and the nominee, despite the underlying reality being false. And then they'll have an argument about it. The Democrats, they're going to, and one of the funniest things about yesterday with the Kash hearing is that everything the Democrats were accusing Kash Patel of, the nation is on Kash Patel's side for all of those complaints. So as far as I'm concerned, that's an advertisement for Kash Patel, and cool. The Republicans were anti-Democrat and pro-Kash, but were also pro the truth of the underlying reality, even when that underlying reality was false. So what's going on there? Well, Elon Musk told us yesterday that all of this is political theater And as you know, people have their different opinions on Elon Musk, but he is still, as I continue to point out, according to Kash Patel, the number one recipient of Defense Department contracts that the United States government has. Here's what he said yesterday on X, formerly Twitter. He's responding to this post, by the way. Imagine being such an insufferable asshole that you'll lecture a nominee for 7 minutes as if he's some stranger, when in fact you were law school roommates, you were a guest at his wedding, and you repeatedly accepted his help for your political campaigns. And so they're referring to Sheldon Whitehouse, the Democrat senator from Rhode Island, who, by the way, is a member of an all-white country club and apparently was law school roommates with RFK Jr. and a guest at his wedding. Elon Musk responded saying, these hearings are just political theater. And I would agree with him 100%. These hearings are just political theater. And then the people who understand and acknowledge that they are political theater will say with straight faces, but they need to lie to us because otherwise the senators won't vote for them and they need to get confirmed so that Donald Trump can get on with his agenda. No, that's not true. In fact, if the Senate is illegitimate and the representatives are going to vote against the will of the people who supposedly put them in office, which is the sort of thing that would make a Senate illegitimate, even if they had been properly elected. And you're admitting that it's political theater and the senators are all trying to advertise themselves to their side of the uniparty, right? The Democrats want all the Democrat supporters to know we're good Democrats. You can stand behind us. And the Republican senators want all the standard issue villagers on the uniparty right to think, oh, that Republican is on my side. I can trust that guy. I'm going to trust that guy in the future. Like Tom Tillis with his very based and red-pilled bingo card for the cash hearing. Oh, I'm going to show you my bingo card. Clown show. It's a clown show. It's political theater. It's embarrassing. I think it's a disgrace, to be honest. I think it's shameful that any American engages with this as though it's real. Okay. I think it's like they're telling you that Santa Claus is, I think it's basically like when NORAD says, oh, look, we've spotted Santa Claus on the radar. And everybody's like, shh. They're all just going to talk about Santa Claus as though Santa Claus is real because we don't want to upset the normies too much. They're not prepared to hear that Santa Claus is not real. We're just going to tell them again that they can see Santa Claus on radar. And they've got to figure out on their own, of course, that Santa Claus is not real. And the way to get them to figure that out is by lying to them all the time about everything. If we lie to them about how real Santa Claus is the whole time, one day, they're just going to wake up. That's how it's going to happen. One day, through a series of lies, forever lies, that could go on well after these people are dead. They'll wake up, of course, sometime after they're dead. We're just going to lie to them forever. And then those of us who know that they're lying, well, we're going to make excuses for them. Because that's the right way to proceed morally. We're going to make excuses for them lying so that they can lie forever. And we're going to say that their lies are to wake up the normies. And we have apparently convinced ourselves that this is the way to go about our future as members of the truth movement. We're just going to lie to everybody about the most important things of all time forever until the normies have woken up. And the normies waking up will be some standard of awakeness that none of us can actually measure for ourselves. But we have to trust that the good guys know, and maybe they'll tell us at some point. And the way to show them that we're ready for them to tell us the truth is by applauding them as they lie to us forever. And somehow I am left having to defend these points. And I don't know why. And it is depressing, to be honest. And the thing that sucks, And I'm not trying to complain right now. I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, but we got to get past this. I don't want to have to be this skeptical. All right. But if no one else is going to question any of these things, then we have not gotten anywhere. Okay. The standard of whether or not we are going to question someone who wants power from us cannot be whether or not the people we like on television say nice things about this person. Can't be that. If we are not demanding truth from people who know the truth and people who tell the truth elsewhere besides fake Senate hearings, if we are not able to demand the truth from them when they are sworn to tell the truth in the fake government, how are we defining good guys? Honestly, I don't know, man. I really don't know. It's confusing to me why people still accept these ideas after this long. Donald Trump gets the benefit of the doubt always. Okay. If there is another interpretation besides Donald Trump is, and also Donald Trump's not the one setting up these ops. Donald Trump is responding to ops. And we have a real easy time of seeing when the uniparty left and the deep state on the uniparty left is running ops and lying to the public. And for some reason, we can't do the same thing when it's the uniparty right. And people are like, oh, these TV characters on Fox News. Well, what's the difference between liking Tucker Carlson and Dan Bongino and liking Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper? What is the substantive difference? And people would say, well, these people are telling us the truth. Well, are they? Are they telling us the truth all the time? Does it seem like they're telling us the truth to the best of their ability? And the answer is obviously no, they're not. And so we have some other subjective notion about why it's better that Rachel Maddow, than when Rachel Maddow or Brian Stelter or Anderson Cooper or Red Shoes Bill Maher is doing it. And the funniest thing is people are like, Bill Maher, red shoes. And then 2 days later, they're like, look at this based in red-pilled thing that Aaron Rodgers said to Bill Maher on his now based in red-pilled podcast. It's amazing to me. It really is amazing to me. What's the standard? They're lying to, one's lying to wake up the normies. Okay, well, is the other one lying to wake up the normies? Why can't we say that Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper and Bill Maher are lying to wake up the normies? Okay. And so then the two sides of the controlled opposition dynamic lie about absolutely everything in that conversation, right? If Bill Maher and one of the based in red-pilled TV characters got together, Matt Gaetz was just on there the other day. How about that info op? Matt Gaetz is going to be attorney general, then he's not. And now he's going to be an OAN TV character. And then he's on Bill Maher's show. And I've always been a great supporter of Matt Gaetz. I like what Matt Gaetz does, narratively speaking. How are we supposed to take that? If Tucker Carlson was on Bill Maher, are they going to agree to the underlying truth of some fictional reality and then argue about it so that we know where the conversation, the edgier portion of the conversation is within the controlled opposition dynamic, within that central narrative bubble? Or do we just take their word for it because they're nice guys and they're helping wake up the normies? We keep being told that the normies are going to wake up. They haven't done it yet. Okay. Maybe some have. Has it been from them? I would suggest not. It wasn't what did it for me. What did it for me was having my life turned absolutely upside down when the governor of California decided to lock down my state and my industry was gone. In the snap of Gavin Newsom's oily little fingers, my 15-year career was gone. That's what woke me up. Not Tucker Carlson saying based in red-pilled things. Okay. The idea is that something within that controlled opposition dynamic is going to wake up the normies, but it doesn't. All it can do is shift them from one side of the controlled opposition dynamic to the other side. And they never go beyond that without having their lives disrupted, which should tell you that it's the disruption in life that wakes up the normies and not what they were told by the TV characters. And yet we defend those TV characters because we believe they're going to wake up the normies. So either that method of waking up the normies does not work, or that's not what the op's for. Okay. And it's entirely possible that the op's for something else. It's entirely possible that the op is to support the regime's version, the uniparty's version of what the underlying reality actually is. And their ability to mislead us about the underlying reality is what generates the false beliefs and supports the false reality, and then is the catalyst for our behaviors in reality prime based on the incentive and punishment structure of the false reality. Okay. So we are at every moment then working to our own detriment, thinking that we're working to our own benefit because we're responding to a falsified incentive and punishment structure. And everything in the controlled opposition dynamic is designed to keep us there. Okay. It is through rejecting both sides of the controlled opposition dynamic that we get out. And what we have instead is a side totally devoted to supporting one side of that controlled opposition dynamic, while the other side supports the other. And that is what maintains the controlled opposition. And that is what maintains the truth of the underlying reality, despite it being a falsity. The worst thing we can do is continually make excuses for liars, because when we do that, we say we are not prepared to engage with government of, by, and for the people. And if we are not prepared to accept government of, by, and for the people, then not only would the bad guys not let us vote, the good guys wouldn't let us vote either. And that's exactly where we are right now. And people say they want to get out, but they don't really want to get out. And I'm not trying to depress anybody, but we talked for a year about how people were asking for the hose, or maybe 6 months or whatever, that people were asking for the hose, unwilling to admit that their votes don't mean anything. And here we have it. People are getting the hose forever, I guess. I don't actually think that we're going to, because I think that this is that on some level, this is only an information problem, and that it'll be undeniable eventually. But in the meantime, we are making sure that the enemy and their agenda is fully supported through our own action, belief, and consent. And that, my friends, is an undeniable tragedy, because there are actual people being hurt in the real world by the continuation of all of this, because people are unwilling to think for themselves. And I'm not suggesting that that's everybody, but these are the normies that we are attempting to wake up. And for whatever reason, the belief is that truth told on a widespread scale would not wake them up. It's a shame we haven't tried that, isn't it? Why haven't we tried it? Well, because everyone's out there defending the liars. It's amazing. Oh, it's amazing. We're going to get there. We really are. But if we can't demand truth from people who are asking us for power, then what business do we even have suggesting that we are ready to do that? I guess maybe at the end of the day, we can only look after ourselves and do what is right ourselves. And perhaps it is just too much to suggest that we stop excusing liars. I don't know. Am I salty? Maybe a little bit. Let's see what RFK Jr. has to say about an organization called PEPFAR regarding the AIDS problem in Africa.
Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, otherwise known as PEPFAR. It increased, this is during the first Trump administration, from 13 million people to 18 million people across 50 countries, primarily in Africa. Africa has about 1.3 billion people today, or in 2021. It's projected to have 2.5 billion people by 2050. or 25% of the global population. In 2020, PEPFAR reported that 2.8 million babies were born without HIV. That was something that would not have happened but for the PEPFAR program. So it has simply been one of the most successful public health programs in the world and saved approximately 26 million lives. Failure to continue this program, in my view, would risk ceding that leadership to adversaries like China. And I'd like to know whether you support the objectives and goals of PEPFAR.
Let's pause it right there for a second, okay? So there are any number of global regime health-related organizations out there that would make similar claims. They would talk about the extent of the problem. They would go with some suspected death rate. Then they would use a mathematical model, which means they're making it up, to suggest that X number of lives have been saved. And that's John Cornyn there, the senator of Texas. He did some gun legislation and talked about how gun legislation was necessary a couple years back. Shall not be infringed. Texas senator. I guess who gives a shit, right? He's lying to wake up the normies probably, as he was then with the gun legislation. So, you know, he's on our side and that's all that matters because we are Republicans in this ridiculous uniparty infrastructure. Uniparty, okay? Not on our side, regime side, period. Until there is something proven otherwise that all of this was an elaborate op. And that's what they're doing on purpose. No benefit of the doubt for people like John Cornyn. And so he's talking about PEPFAR. And he's saying 2.5 million babies were born without HIV. Is there an HIV test? A real one? Or is it just like COVID? Oh, it's just like COVID. Do we know that anything they did from PEPFAR prevented babies from being born without the whatever thing that test would have picked up? No, there's no reason to believe that. 28 million lives saved? No, there's no reason to believe that either. You can look at studies, very prominent studies from very expert health organizations and find out that 14 million lives were saved by the COVID vaccines. No, they weren't. COVID vaccines were a toxic experimental substance that can't protect anybody from a disease that can't kill anybody. So one thing they didn't do was save 14 million lives, but we were told that by the experts. And of course, it's repeated by politicians like John Cornyn. So if that wasn't bad enough, let's hear what RFK Jr. says.
And would you work with me and my colleagues to make sure that this program continues to provide life-saving antiviral drugs to people who are most in need?
Antiviral drugs? Do antivirals cure viruses? Well, I guess you'd have to know if viruses existed first. People are like, of course viruses existed. Everybody got sick. Well, you got symptoms. You had a reaction to something. I have no doubt about that. All right. Well, you know, we have flu season. Flu is a virus, isn't it? We're told that. Flu disappeared when COVID came, by the way. One virus just kicked the other virus out. Let's say this is a conspiracy theory, okay? No reason to believe this. I'm not even asserting this. I'm just suggesting something like this would be possible. Let's just say that the government, whose agenda seems to include poisoning its people in every aspect of life, delivering poison by whatever means necessary, whether it's in the air from what they put in the sky, or in the water from whatever they put in there, or in our food from whatever they put in there. And of course, that's the whole purpose of the Maha agenda, is because the government poisons us or allows corporations to poison us, despite the fact that it's partners with those corporations. So we got to make sure that the government stops poisoning us. Let's just say maybe it's possible that the government might put certain poisons in government-controlled water supplies, which is all water supply, essentially. Unless you got a well. You can't have that now. You can't live out in the country. But it would be at schools that even if you have a well at home, you send your kid off to school. Well, that's a government building. And the companies, you got to drink at a water fountain in some store you go to. That's same water supply. You work at a public building. That's same water supply. So let's say like every winter, they put something in the water supply that would cause XYZ reactions in some portion of the population. And the symptoms that occurred would be flu-like symptoms. And you'd say, oh, well, I guess it's flu season. This is the sort of thing that happens. I better get a flu shot. And then you're right back into big pharma. And you say, well, I guess I got the virus. But you didn't get a virus. You got poisoned by the water. Now, I'm not saying that happens. Okay. It's a conspiracy theory. And by the way, I'm not even suggesting, I'm not making that caveat so I don't get censored or any of that bullshit. I'm just saying this is only a thought experiment. Okay. So we know that the water supply contains massive amounts of pharmaceuticals. I mean, most people believe that that narrative's been out there for a long time. Could it be false? I suppose. But assuming it's not false, because they can tell us that they're poisoning us and no one bats an eye, then why couldn't they poison us with something else that would cause flu-like symptoms? And then therefore we've just had a poisoning. Okay. And then if they have a test that says, oh, you got a virus, well, and then they run that test zillions of times, then we think, oh, there's a viral pandemic. And the proof is that all these people are sick. All right. And so there's no connection logically there whatsoever. And they can't, of course, isolate the virus and prove that a virus causes disease, which is why they made a whole category separate for viruses that ignores Koch's postulates. But we're just supposed to believe all that. And then AIDS, of course, functions the same way. And we know that the AIDS virus, the HIV virus, operates the same way that these other viruses do. Now, the fact that all of these things are consistently communicated to us from public health experts, the science, the politicians, and the people who are supposedly opposing those politicians and the science and the experts and the pharma companies and the rest of it, they all agree that the underlying truth of viral theory and the truth of all these viruses as out there in the world, naturally occurring, ability to transmit, and ability to get people sick, the underlying truth of that reality, they will agree with that. And then they'll argue about the extent to which they agree about it and what should be done, all understanding that the same industries and same parts of industry are going to ultimately handle these problems. And they are problems that must be handled. And some enormous sum of money should go to handling these problems. Okay. So right now we're talking about PEPFAR, and let's just take a second before we listen to RFK's answer and see what PEPFAR is. So this is what the machine says about PEPFAR. And, you know, to the extent that you're able to trust the machine about anything, you can generally trust the machine to give you the regime's story about the regime agenda. They're going to advertise their own agenda well. They're going to give us the best case scenario. Okay, so I'll repeat that as their best case scenario so that it doesn't look like I'm trying to just shoot my mouth off about how everything's bad or something. PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, is a U.S. government initiative launched in 2003 to combat the global HIV/AIDS epidemic. It is the largest commitment by any nation to address a single disease in history, with over $100 billion invested since its inception. Now, is that all from government, or is it some of it from the philanthropists? Well, a lot of it is from philanthropists, I imagine. Let's actually find out. So let's go through this and then we'll find out about where their funding is. I'll just plug it into the machine right now. Actually, I wonder if we can do Influence Watch on that. And if we can't, then we will. I'm going to search PEPFAR over there. But let's go through this and then we'll find out whether Influence Watch is on. Actually, the answer is no. PEPFAR's primary goals are to save lives, prevent HIV infections, and accelerate progress toward controlling the HIV/AIDS pandemic. Okay, it's not an epidemic anymore. It's a pandemic now in more than 50 countries worldwide. Okay, so regime, colonies, and countries. The program has achieved significant results, including saving over 25 million lives. Wowie, wow, wow. Wait, did I do that part of my soundboard yet? Oh, I have a wowie, wow, wow. And it's Christopher Walken. I'm going to have to get this. I'm going to have to get this right now. We need it. And by we, I mean mostly me, but also you. I'm sure that you will agree once you have experienced it, that you need it. And so I will give it to you. Here it is. Hold for processing. We're almost there. I was able to find it quickly. And now, of course, my computer is being very, very slow. But we're almost there. Here we are. How perfect. Wowie, wow, wow. We have a new video for the soundboard. If I am able to locate it, and I guess that I did not. We're almost there, I promise. Ah, come on. Hold for processing once again. I'm so disappointed in myself right now. Yes, now I have it. Now I have it. All is not lost. All still might be lost. We're not ready just yet to put it in the soundboard. I can't believe how long this has taken me. I hope everybody has read the perplexity entry on screen while I am figuring out how to make my computer play videos. Unbelievable. We're going to have to come back to this. I am saddened to no end by these terrible results we have achieved. And by we, I mean I. They got mad at Cash for using the royal we yesterday. I can't remember who that was. That was really funny, though. So they saved 25 million lives, supported life-saving antiretroviral therapy for 20.6 million people, including 566,000 children with HIV, allowing 5.5 million babies to be born HIV-free. Reduced AIDS-related deaths by 50%. They cannot know any of those things. None of them. That is all bullshit science. And Cornyn repeated it, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you'll see his answer. PEPFAR's approach includes providing treatment, prevention, and care services, as well as strengthening health systems and building capacity in partner countries. The program emphasizes data-driven policies and partnerships across multiple sectors to maximize its impact and promote sustainability. PEPFAR has received consistent bipartisan support across 4 presidential administrations and 10 U.S. Congresses, demonstrating its importance in American foreign assistance and global health efforts. Okay, so it was around before Trump. It's not a Trump program. It was around prior to Trump. It's been around for 4 presidents. So that would be Obama, Trump, Biden, and I guess Trump again. Or is it George W. Bush? So either George W. Bush or Barack Obama put this program in place. And John Cornyn was just bragging about it as though it was a Trump program. Okay, so the funding primarily comes from government fiscal year 2025. The president, that would be Biden, according to the machine, $6.1 billion for this program. Now, if they were actually saving lives at that rate, maybe that would be a good expenditure of $6.1 billion. Of course, they're not doing that. They're not doing that. That's not how it works, okay? That's not how logic works. You can't know that you saved a life, especially if you're lying about what would end that life. Are people's immune systems in Africa being destroyed by the vaccine programs being run in Africa? That is a far better and far more likely explanation than, oh, they got AIDS. And I guess I've been told that AIDS diagnosis is different in Africa than it is here. Well, what difference does that make? Let's hear Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Absolutely support PEPFAR, and I will happily work with you to strengthen the program.
Thank you. Senator Bennett. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for being.
Isn't that interesting? So he supports PEPFAR. The expenditure is fine. The program, I guess, sounds good. He certainly didn't say, well, Senator, you see, I have some different beliefs about the AIDS crisis, and I've actually thought about this and written about this extensively. I have some thoughts about that and how that money might be better redeployed. I think I have some issues with how that program is being run. And, but by and large, I understand that we agree about the problem and maybe we agree about some of the solutions. I don't know that I'd sign on for every bit of the program, but I'm agreeing with you that there is a problem. It needs a solution. Maybe this program provides that vehicle. That wasn't the answer. It was, I support that. And I'll work with you to see that the program is improved. And maybe those improvements are enough. And everybody in the truth community is going to say that. Oh, well, you see, he's just not saying the whole thing because he's trying to wake up the normies and he needs the votes of these people. So he can't go out and cause too much controversy talking about the viruses. Well, all that's false. I'm sorry. All that's false. And there are totally reasonable explanations that he could make, avoid the pitfalls, and still be more honest than the answers he's giving, which are not honest. And again, not to cast aspersions on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I generally like, but Nicole Shanahan was making the rounds on War Room the other day, talking about how the Maha and MAGA movements are the biggest movement of all time. Well, no, MAGA is, and you guys are welcome as long as you understand that it's MAGA. We're totally down to make things more healthy. We were already on that without your help. Thank you very much. And if you want to join, you're more than welcome to join. But we unite around this. We're not uniting around Maha. Sorry. That's not the direction this is going. Nicole Shanahan was RFK Jr.'s vice presidential candidate. Maybe that was just to put her right up front and center, give her a spotlight. Before that, and no offense to her, I'm not trying to attack who she is as a woman or anything else. She's prominent because she dated big tech oligarchs. Was she spying on them the whole time? I don't know. But what are we talking about here? It's so crazy. The defenses that people will make for these individuals for who knows what reason. The idea that Trump has appointed them, therefore we have to defend them at all costs, even if it means lying or defending them lying. No, thank you. No, thank you. That's not the point of this. And I don't know why, by the way, because Donald Trump represents a variety of viewpoints, and we've talked about this extensively over the years. I don't know why people think it is more respectful to Donald Trump to protect whatever he says, even when he says things that are directly the opposite of that thing, than to think for ourselves while giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't understand why one of them is looked at as the way to respect Donald Trump, and then the other view, that's to say Donald Trump could be doing these nominations for a variety of reasons. Let's apply American principles and some discernment as to the truth in our assessment of these individuals. Okay? Because he's told us straight up that some of these people he has chosen as the result of a negotiation with the other side. He's told us that in Truth Social posts in no uncertain terms. But these TV characters in particular have to be our best friends. We have to be best friends with these ones. We have to defend them all at all costs. This is what RFK Jr. had to say, or this is what, sorry. I have listened to the complete audiobook of The Real Anthony Fauci, as I assume many of you have as well. Okay. I remember the approach he took to vaccine experimentation, to medical experimentation, to issues in Africa, issues with Fauci and orphans. So I asked the machine, what did Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you might be able to see the question up there at the top of the screen. What did Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his book, the real Anthony Fauci, say about Anthony Fauci's role in the AIDS epidemic? In his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made several controversial claims about Anthony Fauci's role in the AIDS epidemic. 1. Kennedy accused Fauci of partnering with pharmaceutical companies to sabotage safe and effective off-patent therapeutic treatments for AIDS. He alleged that Fauci, number 2, orchestrated fraudulent studies and pressured FDA regulators to approve a chemotherapy treatment that he supposedly knew was ineffective against AIDS. The book claims Fauci violated federal laws to allow pharmaceutical companies to use impoverished and dark-skinned children as test subjects for AIDS and cancer chemotherapy experiments. Kennedy promoted HIV/AIDS denialism, questioning the established scientific consensus that HIV causes AIDS. He accused Fauci of exaggerating HIV's transmissibility and refusing to research alternative AIDS therapies. The book alleges that Fauci promoted the use of azithromycin. I hope I'm saying that right. Azithromycin, AZT, famous drug, to treat HIV, claiming it was killing people at the time. And remember remdesivir? That was an antiviral. Is it worse than the antivirals? I believe that's an antiviral, isn't it? And then they had Paxlovid, which is definitely an antiviral. I don't want to get one of these very important medical facts wrong. If you mislabel a pharma product that just so happens to kill people, yes, it is an antiviral. If you mislabel it, well, we have to disavow everything you've said about the subject. Did RFK Jr. represent the opinions expressed in his book, and I think well substantiated in his book, in that hearing when given the opportunity? No, he did not. He supported the truth of the underlying reality about AIDS, the underlying claim about reality from the regime about AIDS, that it is a virus, that it can be treated with these antivirals, etc. He knows. So why didn't he say what he knows? Well, then we have to go to the political theater element. And it is political theater. Who is putting on this political theater? We always assume, well, this is the White Hats, or the White Hats are at least on the Republican side. What? That doesn't even make sense. You just assume which people are good based on a little letter they put next to their name. That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Okay. And by the way, RFK has been a Democrat his whole life. So he doesn't even have the R next to his name. And neither does Tulsi Gabbard for that matter. So what we're left saying then, and again, I'm not trying to call Robert F. Kennedy a liar. I'm trying to point out that he clearly knew something different than what he said when given the opportunity under oath in front of the nation. Is he lying the other times? I don't think he is. And we are told that he has to do this in order to avoid controversy from Donald Trump in the Donald Trump realm. On Donald Trump's behalf, he has to avoid controversy. Donald Trump is a walking controversy. And now Donald Trump expressed a month ago, something like that he didn't want anybody else tweeting about Trump administration policies after the H-1B visa dust up, let's say. Okay, so I get it. Adhere to the message, stick to the message. Fine. Is it possible that the message was chosen by the Trump team for good reasons? Yes, it is possible. But I don't know that. And you don't know it either. And what we do know is that the truth was not being told by someone who is asking for power from the American people. And we are told that it's acceptable that he didn't tell the truth as well as he knows it, because he was doing it in front of our representatives whose votes he needs to be able to do the job that he says he's going to do in the Trump administration. Is it also okay if he lies once he gets into that job? And again, lie might be a strong word here. And this isn't about RFK Jr. Take him out of it. Anybody. If it's okay for them to lie to our representatives, who supposedly are asking him questions on our behalf. I mean, that's obviously not true. But, and so is it okay to lie to a liar? Is it okay to lie to someone who's not doing their job? Well, yeah, maybe. It's all political theater. But then we can't take the next step and say, well, he needs these people's votes to take on this job. No, he doesn't. And there are already active people in that role doing that job. And Trump is writing executive orders. And the job that primarily needs done can be done by an executive with plenary authority, because that executive's job is to not pass any legislation from that illegitimate Congress and Senate, and to return the executive branch and the federal government at large down to the level it was meant to be at our founding. And he doesn't need help to do that. It might be nice that he has help. He has the American people's help getting his back, but Donald Trump can just keep eliminating parts of the executive branch with his pen. And I'm all for him doing that. I want Congress to go home. I want the Senate to go home. And I don't want any of the fantasy team to be in office whatsoever. Okay? How about that? We would still be just fine. We would still be just fine. People believe we're under a military government already. I believe that as well. It says it right here. Okay? And Donald Trump is either leading that or he is working in conjunction with it. If we have a military government in place already and the military is just fine and working on behalf of a free American people in the constitutional republic that was our birthright, then it certainly doesn't matter if one of the TV characters gets into the Trump administration. It's a preposterous notion to think otherwise. Okay? Like, do we have to hold ourselves to any logical consistency, or are we just meant to clap as we watch the movie the whole time? And if we're clapping as we watch the movie the whole time, then why would anyone assume that we won't be watching the movie forever? Do you want to watch the movie forever? I don't. And I know that a lot of people detect in their own lives and in the lives of their friends and family a great deal of chaos and anxiety and depression and terrible health consequences, terrible life consequences, because everyone lives in a world built by only lies. And rather than telling the truth as a response, we're told that if we just tell this magical combination of lies, that's the way out. There's no way that can be true. And it's a shame that we're stuck there trying to repeat that what we need is a perfect combination of lies told to everyone at once. And once everybody gets back on the same page with that set of lies, well, at that point, then we're going to wake up the normies, and that's when we can move on. No. When we get back on the same page, that's when the regime has won. And for whatever reason, we have people committed to supporting the truth of the underlying narrative. And a lot of people will not even be willing to admit that they are being lied to about the underlying reality, especially when it comes to things like the existence of viruses. And fine, you can't prove that viruses don't exist. All right, well, everybody who says that has no idea what a philosophical argument toward non-existence requires. Okay? So why would I even engage that discussion? What does it mean to prove that a virus doesn't exist? I can prove that they're lying about everything they've ever said about viruses. That doesn't get you there. I can prove that the scientists are lying about all sorts of things all the time, and they're doing it to exploit you. And here's how they've exploited you. That doesn't get you there, and it doesn't get people there. No, you can't make that claim. You're saying all science is bad? Did I say all science is bad? I said what I said. Doesn't get you there. So then what are we supposed to do at that point? What are we supposed to do? It's better to just tell the truth. It's better to just tell the truth. It is always better to just tell the truth. And as soon as we have diverged from that, we're in a real tough place. What is the basis on which we decide when it is good to lie and when it is bad to lie if we have already accepted that lying is okay? On what basis do we make these determinations? And of course, at that point, it is only moral relativism. And moral relativism, I used to not believe this, by the way. And this is not about me and making personal judgments or holding myself up higher or anything like this. I used to be a moral relativist. Okay. I used to be a liberal. I used to live a very libertarian social lifestyle. Some might even say accurately, libertine. Okay. So I'm in no place to judge or condemn anyone for it, but I know what moral relativism is now because I'm no longer a moral relativist, at least to the extent I can avoid that sin. And it is a sin. It is the pretense that immorality can be masked by a belief in amorality, right? There are some things that are obviously very, very bad, but for the rest of it, well, we're just making a decision. And the standard of whether or not everything beneath a certain level is moral or immoral is whether or not consent is attached to it. And of course, that's just Satanism. And that is actually what moral relativism is. Amorality is immorality, like with a soft tone. And once you understand that, it's really difficult to say that, you know what, it's actually okay. There's this entire body, this entire list of situations where it's okay to lie. We need to lie in order to wake up the normies. They're not awake after us lying for 5 years. There's no proof that our lying is ever going to awaken them. But it's what we got to do. And you know what? Trump says it's okay because he put this person in the spotlight. What kind of abdication of moral responsibility is that? We don't actually have to demand the truth from this person because Donald Trump says so. Donald Trump didn't say that. He just posted on Truth Social that this is my nominee. This is the new member of the fantasy team. See what they say to this bunch of illegitimately elected senators who are working on behalf of the most evil global regime that has ever existed. It's Donald Trump's fault that we can't demand the truth. I don't think so. Let's continue. So I saw this post this morning. This is Sage Steele, a based and red-pilled influencer who used to be at ESPN until DEI got her down. And it's amazing because she's black. And so she left ESPN and she became super based and red-pilled. And now she goes on all the podcasts and talks about how based and red-pilled she is. Talks about these super important issues that are just the most obvious things in the world, but we can't figure them out because everything's so woke. Oh, we're anti-woke crusaders. Okay. So she posted this picture today, and next to her is Danica Patrick, former race car driver. Everybody loves her. Oh my God, she's the hot chick who race car drives. All the NASCAR fans, the based and red-pilled NASCAR fans, oh, they sure do love Danica Patrick. Is she the perfect person to deliver certain based and red-pilled messages, just like Sage Steele is for people who watch other sports? Yes. Is that what the info op is? Yeah. Are they telling the truth? No, that's the only problem. They're waking up the normies for sure, moving them from the uniparty left side of the controlled opposition dynamic to the uniparty right side of the controlled opposition dynamic. Crushing it there, crushing it. Waking the hell up out of those normies, getting them right over to the other side of the controlled opposition dynamic. They're almost all the way up to the gate. Oh, and then the gatekeeping comes in. You're going to stand right there, normie. That's just about far enough. Okay. So Sage Steele does it to the people who like the NBA and the NFL, and Danica Patrick does it to the people who like NASCAR and, Indy racing and F1. And I know they're different. I know the car goes around like this on one and it goes like this on the other one. I know they're very, very different. One of them is by rich people who aren't hicks, and one of them is by rich people who are. One set of rich people gets to hang out and listen to classical music and talk about Europe. They drive around to all the coolest sites. And the other one, they just go wah, 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 wah around the track. I get it. They're different. Okay, so in addition to those two based and red-pilled influencers, we have House in Habit. She's based and red-pilled about Jeffrey Epstein and P. Diddy. And those definitely aren't rug pulls on the way, except they totally are rug pulls on the way. And it doesn't mean they're not true. Okay. It doesn't mean there aren't elite pedophiles, especially in Hollywood and especially among celebrities and producers and music producers and the rest of it. Okay. Absolutely certain there are. But I'm also certain that there are going to be influencers giving us limited hangout versions of those stories while focusing absolutely everything on the celebrity aspects so that no matter what story is out there in the world, it can be distracted from immediately by tuning everyone in with celebrities. And why do people care so much about the celebrities in those particular stories? Because nothing is better than figuring out that actually, yes, it's the elites. It's the celebrities. They're really evil. And people are like, they're all that way. Well, no, they're not all that way. But yes, this makes it simpler. So based in red pilled, Santos Say Cheese. No idea who that is. Taylor Hathorne, I guess is that person or something. No idea who that is either. Okay. Don't know those people. Oh, wait, there's one more person here. Who is this? Well, this is No Name's daughter. In fact, Sage Steele with her little American flag here is reposting No Name's daughter, that being Meghan McCain. Okay. Formerly of The View. Political Nepo baby. Isn't that cute? Oh, I'm a political Nepo baby. My daddy was John McCain. John McCain helped disseminate the Steele dossier. Did he do that on Donald Trump's behalf? Is he part of the op? Maybe. Right? I mean, while we're giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, we might as well give it to No Name too. Oh, you don't want to do that this time. Okay. Was No Name and his little buddy, Lindsey Graham, were they in Ukraine and involved in the overthrow of Ukraine in 2014 with the Azov battalion? Yup, they were. Yeah, so his daughter is this chick right here who used to talk every day to the craziest liberal women anyone has ever met. And she would convince them that they, in fact, were not crazy about Donald Trump. They were right on. Trump is that dangerous, as are his supporters. So she said in this post on X, formerly Twitter, Team Tulsi with my free thinking sisters. Oh, they all have different ideas. And that's even their brand, that they have different ideas, but can still get along. How special is that? Team Tulsi. Gosh, that's lovely. Meghan McCain is on Team Tulsi. Now, why is that? I don't know why that is. It's interesting for sure. What does that say about Tulsi Gabbard? Now, again, this isn't about casting aspersions on Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard's great, but I don't know that. And everyone who tells me they know it doesn't know it either. That's crazy then to assume that because Donald Trump spotlighted Tulsi Gabbard, who has been part of Tucker Carlson's Shillfest for years, a Fox News host like Pete Hegseth, like Sean Duffy. Again, Trump assigned most of Fox News's roster to the fantasy team and their guests to the fantasy team. Fox News isn't going to be able to have TV shows anymore because everybody's going to be gone. Then someone later on called Kevin Smith. Is this the director, Kevin Smith? No, founder of the Loud Majority. He's on the New York Young Republican board of the New York Young Republican Club, I think is the C, their board of advisors. So he posted this earlier. He says, Tulsi Gabbard enters for her confirmation hearing looking spectacular. Okay, so we're going to talk about how cute Tulsi. And so there you got Meghan McCain getting a nice warm hug. And was that Tulsi Gabbard's husband? Let me see. think that is what the other post I read said, but I want to make absolutely sure. Yes, it is. Okay. So that's Tulsi Gabbard's husband. And he just warmly greeted Meghan McCain sitting next to her for the hearing. Those seats are probably reserved for them. And so, I mean, hey, is Meghan McCain like our boy Meghan? Is she like Hunter? Did she somehow give information on her father and the Arizona mafia? You know, I don't know. But she's on Team Tulsi. And Tulsi, oh gosh, she looks so cute. So cute. Oh, Tulsi in white. Oh, it's so cute. Except also, this is from February 2020. Vox, Democrat women are once again wearing all white to the State of the Union. Look at that. How about that? And of course, Tulsi Gabbard at that point was still a Democrat. And they're doing this in celebration of the suffragettes. We're wearing our suffragette white for tonight's State of the Union. So is Tulsi Gabbard on board with that sort of thing? Is she on board with that political agenda? What is the statement to be made for wearing white? I mean, it's not between Memorial Day and Labor Day, so she's already breaking the fashion law. Let's see. So there we go. Representative Debbie Dingell. Look at all these Democrats. And we've gone, we've done footage from that State of the Union before where they're all there in white and they stand at the same time and they hate Donald Trump at the same time and blah, blah, blah. So I have no problem, again, with Tulsi, and she talked about Edward Snowden, and there was some confrontation in the hearing over how she described Snowden, and she was being, she was defending his honor at some point. She said she wants to make it safe for whistleblowers to come out and let the public know what the government's been doing. And here we go. Here's a defense of Tulsi Gabbard. Okay. Perhaps the TV show is to let all Americans know about these things, and it's all going to roll out after they're all in their positions. Okay. And Tulsi Gabbard is going to release a series of whistleblower testimonies to the public so that they can know about all these things. And she will handle the public communications on that because she's very good at public communications, or so, people will say, because she's on television. I don't find her very interesting to listen to, but that's my own personal opinion. And it doesn't mean she can't effectively communicate the message to other people who are not me. Okay. So this is a defense of her. Maybe that is her job. Maybe the acting members of Trump's administration right now are doing what they need to do and getting all that stuff done. And then the TV characters will come in to communicate all of it to the American public. And if that's the case, then I'll say, clap, clap, clap. Well done. You guys have all done your jobs really, really well. But right now, I don't know that to be true. So my responsibility is to the truth and telling the truth and saying when people are not telling the truth, because otherwise, why would people in the public who are waking up and trying to discern the truth defend truthers who are not themselves defending the truth and demanding the truth? I don't understand why people's attention and money and time goes to those they know to be lying to them or excusing the lies of other people. And because we don't know, I'm not saying that they're not right, that these aren't ops. I just described how it would work. I'm saying we don't know. And all of them would admit they don't know. And if they didn't admit it, then you would be like, okay, well, that person's definitely lying to me, because it's pretty clear at this point that some people have just been spotlighted so that everybody knows what it is they've done, unless the whole thing's just a stage play. And that may be possible as well. And maybe the result, ultimately, the only way out is to tune out completely. And if we're going to do that and still have a government, then the people need to be involved in the government and just not be listening to the television. Okay. But right now we have ourselves believing the television characters as they rationalize why other people are lying, themselves also lying. and we're like, no, we got to get these people's backs. They're on our side. Well, what other standard could there be for on our side versus not on our side than they lie to the American public all the time in a quest for their own power to implement their own preferred agenda? And it's not like we're talking about people who live these incredible moral lives. You know, it's not even that they're not even Christians, which is the funniest thing. They're literally scientific materialists, which is the other side. Not all, okay? Not all. And I'm not trying to attack people's beliefs. It is a fact about reality, at least what we can tell about these people. So, I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is legitimately a Hare Krishna. Now, I don't know much about that belief system, and I'm not trying to besmirch her for it, but I have to think it's kind of worldly. Maybe I'm wrong. At some point, we have to figure out what we actually stand for and then actually stand for that thing, rather than assuming that people with the same letter after their name as the people we vote for in fake elections are just automatically on our side. And the funny thing is, sometimes they don't even have that letter next to their name. And I'm all about the unity government, right? I used to be a liberal. I've said it countless times. I understand the motivation toward that. I just think if we're not motivated primarily toward the truth and not actually saying when someone's not telling the truth, I mean, what would give? Let me, I think, steelman the case that I am arguing against, okay? And maybe I just lost my point. Oh, man. I think I was, maybe I'll just move on. Maybe I'll come back to it. I really am not trying to go after a straw man here. And I think that the point here is a valid one. What would be the signal? This is what it was. We are saying that these people can't tell the full truth as they know it in this situation, because if they do, it will generate too much controversy, and then they can't get the votes of these people. What would give them the fortification, the fortitude to be able to tell the truth in the fullness that they know it in an environment like this? I would suggest that the only route to that is all of us supporting that truth so widely that it's impossible to avoid that the majority of the country understands the truths we're referring to. I said for cash, no matter what complaints they make about cash for January 6th, the majority of the country knows now that something was wrong with January 6th, or most things were wrong, or the whole thing was wrong. Okay? There's some level to which it was just a film shoot. People went there with film crews and shot films, including Nancy Pelosi's daughter. So if they're going to try to make an example out of Kash Patel for making counter narrative claims about January 6th, the country is already on Kash's side about that. Is the country on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s side about vaccines? He said that he was not anti-vax over and over again. In fact, let me pull that up. And I don't think anybody is unaware of RFK Jr.'s comments. He's made those claims and said he's not anti-vax plenty of times in plenty of venues. So I don't think that's the sort of thing that anyone could doubt. I have two clips on that, actually. Yeah, let's check this one out first.
Move from advocacy to public responsibility. Americans are going to need to hear a clear and trustworthy recantation of what you have said on vaccinations, including a promise from you never to say vaccines aren't medically safe when they in fact are, and making indisputably clear that you support mandatory vaccinations against diseases where that will keep people safe.
So if you want to be in our government, then you need to recant all the things you've said about vaccinations and let the public know that vaccines are safe. That's his college roommate saying that to him. A man who was at his wedding saying that to him. Why didn't he say, hi, RFK Jr., the public might need to know this or want to know this. You and I have known each other for 50 years. In fact, we've been close friends at many points in that 50 years. Why didn't either of them bring that up? Isn't that information the public should absolutely have from the two of them? So Sheldon Whitehouse tells RFK Jr. he has to recant his statements about vaccines if he wants to work for the illegitimate government, for the regime's government. And I don't know why, by the way, it's Donald Trump's appointment, because he has to do that. Otherwise, he has to then say, yeah, we're not appointing to any of these positions. So he's done it. He has acting people in there. He's appointed these people. Are these people trying to be in the constitutional republic, or are they just trying to, be members of the false reality government? And I would suggest the second, but we will see. Here's one more comment from RFK Jr. on the vaccinations.
Vaccinated. I've written many books on vaccines. My first book in 2014, the first line of it is, I am not anti-vaccine. And the last line is, I am not anti-vaccine. Nor am I the enemy of food producers. American farms are the bedrock of our culture, of our politics, of our national security. I was a 4-H kid, and I spent my summer working on.
Okay. So the first line of his book is, I'm not anti-vaccine. The last line of his book is, I'm not anti-vaccine. So people will say, well, you can't take on all these fights in this venue. Maybe you can give him the benefit of the doubt if you want. Why is it bad when Trump does it? We were told by the Ron supporters, we were told by many Maha people, we're told by many people who were MAGA in some sense, that it was Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump was basically responsible for a genocide because he, quote unquote, promoted the vaccine that came from, quote unquote, vaccine that came from Operation Warp Speed, which was about far more than a vaccine, and people ignore that as well. So Donald Trump not saying that he's anti-vaccine is some moral crime from which he can never be forgiven. And when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does it in Senate testimony, no big deal. I'm not anti-vaccine. Okay, which vaccine are you for? And he says, well, I'd be for any vaccine that has the scientific record that proves that it's safe and effective. So you trust the science? How much do you trust the science? Have you seen science that suggests that vaccines are safe and effective? Which ones? And of course, he listed the polio vaccine and the MMR vaccine. Well, is there science suggesting that they're not what they used to be and they're not vaccines and instead they're just saline solution and it has no ability to do anything? Nope. I don't think that's what it is. I mean, I guess you can make up all sorts of imaginary ways that he was just using code language. But if Donald Trump is a servant of pharma for saying that he's not anti-vax and that he thinks that the vaccine helped people, and there's an argument to be made at least that it did because it ended lockdowns, okay? No one got forced to take that vaccine. People chose to take that vaccine. They might have gotten leveraged and coerced, and I feel really bad about that, and that sucks. But Donald Trump told everybody for a year that COVID wasn't deadly. He showed them it wasn't deadly. He showed them that there were a range of therapeutics. The fact that there were a range of therapeutics meant that it shouldn't have received an EUA. None of that's Donald Trump's fault. He didn't make anybody take the vaccine. But this is the anti-vax warrior, according to people who hate Donald Trump for that. And he's not anti-vax. He says it. Why isn't he anti-vax? Why isn't he? Why isn't he publicly, boldly anti-vaccine? Is it because he's scared of pharma? Maybe pharma is something to be scared of, and I'm open to that. Okay. But at the bottom of that is the false claim. It is the claim that supports the underlying truth of a false reality. And that's what the controlled opposition does. Okay? Is he Sheldon Whitehouse's controlled opposition, or is he on our side? And that's for each and every person to decide for themselves. Okay? That's not some violation of Donald Trump's, of our affinity for Donald Trump and our support for Donald Trump, to demand basic honesty about what the person says in other places. Should he be speaking on our behalf about these issues when he is asked in sworn testimony? Or is it okay that he lies? Did he lie? I guess you could try to massage ways that he didn't. He hasn't told the truth to the fullest extent he knows it when given the opportunity. And he just took that opportunity and some of these opportunities were in response to his college roommate that no one really paid attention to. Gosh, man, at what point do we decide that the truth matters? And if it doesn't matter, what are we doing? Let's pause for a second, take a look at the chat. Michelle the Bean, $10. Remember when everybody instantly asked, who's they? When you explain deep state, people wig out, interrupting, demanding you explain your craziness. Tell who they are. Interesting, no one asked anymore. That is an interesting observation. And I think what Michelle is saying is, you know, one of the instant kind of knee-jerk reactions to any talk of they and any talk of a regime, any talk of top-down control over these things is that they'll respond, who's they? Who's they? And then they make you define they. They make you assert positive claims about who they is, so that then they can attack those claims. And then you just get off into an argument about something totally irrelevant to the issue, to understanding what's actually happening. And she's saying that that doesn't occur as much anymore. If that's true, I hope that you are right. I still do experience that occurring at some points. I don't get in these discussions with normies that often, with people who haven't woken up. My policy, and everybody has the different way that they react with their friends and acquaintances and strangers and people in their family, people they know, people they love, whatever relationship it is. There's probably slightly different standards in those relationships. My approach is to just say the true thing all the time. And that's that. Then you don't have to get caught doing anything you don't want to do. If they get upset at what you say the truth is, just be like, hey, we don't have to talk about this. This is what I think about it. I do a lot of work thinking about these things, developing these thoughts. But if you don't want to hear my thoughts, then great. We don't have to talk about it. Simple. But you don't have to like agree with what they're wrong about to avoid a confrontation and then have a conversation as though that thing they're right or thing they're wrong about is not something that they're wrong about. All right. That thing they're wrong about is the only substance of the conversation. Opinions on top of that don't make any difference. A Dig just said, normies tend to avoid me, which I'm okay with. Yeah, I mean, they're not coming around me that often either. Let me play one more thing. And here's good RFK. I think this is good RFK, if I have the right clip. Or maybe this is good Kash Patel.
Conspiracy theorist? That is a pejorative, Senator, that's applied to me, mainly to keep me from asking difficult questions of powerful interests. I was told that I was a conspiracy theorist. That label was applied to me because I said that the vaccines, the COVID vaccine, didn't prevent transmission and it wouldn't prevent infection, when the government was telling people, Americans, that it would. I was saying that because I was looking at the monkey studies in May of 2020. I was called a conspiracy. Now everybody admits it. I was called a conspiracy theorist because I said red dye caused cancer. And now FDA has acknowledged that and banned it. I was called a conspiracy theorist because I said fluoride lowered IQ. Last week, JAMA published a meta-review of 87 studies saying that there's a direct inverse correlation between IQ loss.
All right, so I'm going to assume
I
a
could
lot
go
of
on
those,
for about a
so
week.
is there any one of them that you can say, you got me? That really was a conspiracy theory? Or are you in a
Not
position to submit for the record? I think it'd just be helpful for every one of these narratives for you to submit that maybe for the record. You said
It's weird that Tom Tillis began speaking over him right when he started talking about fluoride. Oh, by the way, fluoride is one of those things that they poison your water with. Crazy, huh? They poison your water with something that you actually can't detect in terms of symptoms that might convince you have the flu or a cold. It just reduces your intelligence. Crazy, huh? It's not in it. It's not in there. Oh, man. It's a conspiracy theory. It's crazy to suggest that they're poisoning the water. It's crazy to suggest that viruses don't exist. And it's not crazy to believe that they wouldn't lie so thoroughly as to convince the public that viruses do exist when they don't, despite the fact that it gives them a totally hands clean, hands off cause for selling people new pharmaceutical products. And it allows them to poison people at will with no blowback. Gosh, isn't it such an amazing system? I better not talk about these things. These are conspiracy theorists or conspiracy theories. And the reason that the nominees don't talk about them is because they're trying to wake up the normies, and normies won't wake up from hearing the truth. That's why we never try telling them the truth. And again, if the entire world is just about whether one set of secret society liars is controlling things rather than another set of secret society liars, well, then I guess this is just the human condition. But if it's not that, then maybe there's a purpose for telling the truth. And if it is that, maybe if everybody told the truth, we could get out of the permanent control between bouncing back and forth between these two sets of liars. Just saying. I don't know. I'm just saying. Okay. Checking the chat real quick. All right. I think maybe this will be my final subject of the day. We talked about Bob Menendez in September 2023. And the title of that show, an allusion to a movie title. Here it is. What about Bob Menendez? Okay, 9/26/23. And we talked about how, regardless of Menendez's guilt in the political controversy, the corruption controversy that befell him at the time, what we were witnessing was a clear takedown of Bob Menendez. And you can see a takedown operation at the same time you see someone who is worthy of being taken down because they committed actual crimes. Okay. We got to be able to keep the two things distinct, even when they are running concurrently, right? It's entirely possible that a corrupt politician should be taken down, and the media operation around their takedown is itself either a limited hangout or an intentional takedown meant to get rid of that person, totally besmirch their reputation for all time, whatever it might be. Okay. We can deal with the two things separately. And I think that's what I attempted to do a year and a half ago when the issue began. Now, at the time, we talked about the fact that Donald Trump had pardoned an associate of Bob Menendez. So that was a follow-up question. I looked up the Solomon Melgen or Melgen pardon. Dr. Solomon Melgen, a prominent Florida eye doctor, received clemency from former President Donald Trump on January 20th, 2021, during Trump's final hours in office. Melgen had been convicted in 2017 of defrauding Medicare out of $73 million and was serving a 17-year prison sentence. And by the way, if you saw the question below that I asked if this was tied to Rick Scott, because one of the complaints about Rick Scott was that he was involved in a Medicare fraud case. And his was when he was at the head of HCA Columbia, a larger Medicare fraud case than Melgen's. Okay. And Rick Scott was the guy we were told was the super based and red pilled MAGA candidate for Senate Majority Leader before John Thune was chosen. We were supposed to all jump behind Rick Scott. Rick Scott, that's our guy. And we got John Thune. Is John Thune Trump's guy? It seems John Thune is Trump's guy. So why did the Con Inc. media op tell us that our guy was Rick Scott? Maybe it's for a good reason, maybe it's for a bad reason, but it was an op. And why do all those people in the same op tell us that all the TV characters on the fantasy team are good guys? Just saying. They all seem to be coordinating to achieve the same narrative missions again and again and again, while those narrative missions are appealing to standard issue villagers on the uniparty right, somewhat appealing to MAGA, but nonetheless not the proper solution from a MAGA perspective and from a truth-telling perspective. At what point can we acknowledge, oh, hey, there's another operation here? All right. Now, if we were watching a football game we would be able to tell what sides people were on based on not only what uniforms they were wearing, because we can see those, that's to tell us what team they're on, but we could also see to a high degree of certainty which side's goals they were pursuing. And as we watch them pursue those goals together, that's how we can tell. If they were all wearing the exact same uniforms, we would still be able to tell which team was which because we knew what goals they were pursuing. When I was a kid, we played pickup games of football during our high school's lunch period. We would go outside and we would play football. And sometimes it would be shirts and skins, or there would be whatever other way that you would know, okay, that guy's on that side. But at the end of the day, everybody who's watching, who doesn't even know what the teams are, could look and tell that one side is pursuing that end zone, the other side is going the other direction. And therefore we know who's on what team to a high degree of certainty. And yet we see people pursuing the same goals in these narrative operations. And we believe that because they have a certain letter next to their name, or they work for a certain media organization, or Donald Trump has said something nice about that person at some point, that we know what sides they're on. And then we ignore what goals they're actually pursuing. It is madness. But let us continue. Melgen was accused of persuading elderly patients to undergo unnecessary tests and treatments for diseases they did not have. That sounds bad. This is a claim, of course. Prosecutors described his actions as truly horrific and barbaric and inhumane. Between 2008 and 2013, Melgen received approximately $100 million from Medicare, $10 million from Medicaid, $62 million from private insurance, and $3 million from patients' payments. Well, that's a hell of a lot of money. A hell of a lot of money. Is there other Medicaid and Medicare fraud that goes on? Yes, all the time, right out in the open, and the government supports it, especially people like Bernie Sanders, who want Medicare for all. Why do people in pharma support Bernie Sanders? Because he pushes for universal health care, which means that everybody gets all the drugs they could ever want. Does pharma like that idea? Yes. Trump commuted Melgen's sentence, releasing him after serving almost 4 years of his 17-year term. The White House statement cited support for clemency from Bob Menendez, Representative Mario Diaz-Balart, members of Brigade 2506, a Cuban exile group. Very interesting. The clemency decision was considered controversial by some as it was part of a larger list of pardons and commutations issued at the end of the Trump presidency. Belgian, in a statement, thanked Trump and said the decision ended a serious miscarriage of justice. He also expressed his commitment to fighting for unjustly incarcerated people and denied harming any patients. I don't know whether or not Salman Melgen or Melgen is a good guy or a bad guy. I don't know. And it doesn't matter. In this analysis, it does not matter. He might be guilty. He might not be guilty. If he's guilty, maybe Trump's a good man for giving him a pardon because he's spilling the beans on everybody else. Or maybe Trump's a bad man because he's just letting the man go. We don't know these things, okay? We're not going to know the ultimate truth of those things. But we know that Trump gave this man a pardon. This is what he's accused of doing. One of the people speaking in support of that pardon was Bob Menendez, okay? So with that said, let's see what Bob Menendez has going on today. This is ABC News once again. Senator Bob Menendez sentenced to 11 years in prison. Oh, sorry, this is 2 days ago. On corruption charges, sentenced to 11 years in prison. Let's cut down here. Menendez calls prosecution a witch hunt. Outside the court following his sentencing, a defiant Menendez called the prosecution a political witch hunt. Regardless of the judge's comments, today I am innocent, and I look forward to filing appeals on a whole host of issues, Menendez said. Menendez referred to the Southern District of New York, which prosecuted the case, as the Wild West of political prosecutions, while outlining grievances with the evidence and witnesses in the trial. President Trump is right. This process is political and it's corrupted to the core. I hope President Trump cleans up the cesspool and restores the integrity to the system. Now, we have in the truth community, in the based and red-pilled community, where we know that Democrats are the problem. It's not scientific materialists. It's not that the people can't discern between truth and falsehood. It's not that the people don't demand truth at all, even from those who they're being asked to give power to with the approval of all the based and red-pilled influencers. It's none of those things. It's the Democrats. People who do not even factor the uniparty into their thinking. They do not even factor the fake elections into their thinking. In fact, they tell everybody to go vote. And then they tell everybody that we need the support of these illegitimate bodies in order for the plenary power in the executive branch to do his job, according to the Constitution. He needs the fantasy team in behind him. And this illegitimate body is going to give the fantasy members all the power to go help Trump. We know Bob Menendez is definitely corrupt because he's a Democrat. Now, Bob Menendez may well be corrupt, right? Again, I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. But we're being told that Bob Menendez is only saying these things, these pro-Trump things, because he wants a pardon. Did the justice system do right by Donald Trump the last 4 years? Well, it's possible that they all acted things out with these fake indictments perfectly according to the plan, and that actually they were investigating something and someone else the entire time while writing indictments in a way that blamed Donald Trump and brought the nation's attention to these problems. All right? I'll give you that there are possible explanations. I can't verify that's true. Neither can you. Maybe someday we'll be able to, and all good. We'll have prepared for that potentiality because we discuss it all the time. But if that's not the case, and the Justice Department is not actually doing a good job all the time, and Merrick Garland's not actually a white hat, and Jack Smith's not actually a white hat, and all these people are not actually white hats, it's not all just kayfabe and blah, blah, blah. If Robert Menendez isn't the evil, corrupt person that everybody decided he was because the Justice Department was doing the right thing this time because Robert Menendez has a D next to his name, well, then maybe they were going after Robert Menendez. Maybe that takedown was to take him down because he's on Trump's side. Now, is it possible that he's on Trump's side because the man he recommended for a pardon got a pardon? Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that Robert Menendez has just been flipped. And I don't mean just in a time sense. I mean, it's possible that he has simply been flipped and that he was for a long time. And I'm not sure if Bob Menendez is one of the Epstein people. I think he might be. There was some island thing with Menendez, if I recall. And I don't mean to cast aspersions. Don't sue me for defamation. Okay, so it's not that. Okay, yes, it is that. So Gwendolyn Beck, a former girlfriend of Senator Bob Menendez, was allegedly involved in activities with Jeffrey Epstein. According to a deposition by Virginia Gettr, one of Epstein's victims, Beck took part in orgies with Epstein. And so that is a former girlfriend of Bob Menendez. So that would be the connection. Now, all that could be real. All that could be false. All of it is certainly an intelligence operation about which the media cannot be trusted to tell us the truth. So I leave all of that open to question. And again, I would suggest that there's going to be a major rug pull on all of that. Okay. Bob Menendez might be a bad guy. I want to make that clear. I don't know how I can make it any clearer. It's totally possible that he might be a bad guy. It's also totally possible that he's not. And it sounds like something bigger than him just wanting a pardon from Trump for this grave crime. It sounds like something bigger is going on because he recommended someone else for a pardon and that person got a pardon. Robert Menendez was trusted. This is Danielle Sassoon from SDNY. She called it an egregious abuse of power at the highest levels of the government's legislative branch. Robert Menendez was trusted to represent the United States in the state of New Jersey, but instead he used his position to help his co-conspirators and a foreign government in exchange for bribes like cash, gold, and a luxury car. The sentences imposed today send a clear message that attempts at any level of government to corrupt the nation's foreign policy and the rule of law will be met with punishment. Well, that's a good principle. Let's talk about all those people doing foreign policy on behalf of Israel. Is that what we're allowed to do on behalf of the UK? Choose your country. I mean, the amount of control over our government from Israel, because we're all part of the same, the evil twin, the uniparty in America is all part of the same global regime. And that's a global regime proxy state, the same way that Ukraine is and the rest of them. Okay. It's not even about the Jews. It's just about Israel, the proxy state. Those interests control American government to some degree. They control not all the governments of the world, although that was close to being true at some point. They control elements in all the countries of the world. And there's no disputing that. It just is what the global regime is. And so who are then the people corrupting the nation's foreign policy? Okay. Pardon, I thought there was one more segment here about Trump. Quite a long list of quite a long article in response to Menendez. So is Robert Menendez going for a pardon, or is Robert Menendez the target of a regime takedown who is actually just given up all the information to go after other elements of the regime? And I would suggest it could be either. I don't know, and I don't pretend to know. I just do know that we need to get past our DNR problem. Anybody who's talking about Democrats and Republicans at this point is just nuts. And these hearings are such a re-indoctrination of the Democrat-Republican dynamic. And man, political theater doesn't even begin to describe how bad this problem is, especially when the government is illegitimate. And the idea that people are defending these nominees for political power in positions of public service, we're defending them as they lie under oath to the American public. What have we become? Truthers, what have we become? Okay. I think I'm going to leave it there for this week. And I will be back on Monday at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns do not work, and they never did. And Joe Biden was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
You down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What must be what?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.